Hi. Today on SDL, Robb Tracy from Sybex joins us to talk about phishing with Russ and me, and how we need to try to develop ways to stop phishing, because we're all really just one click away from a fish hook through the eyeball kind of, un chien andalou kind of scenario, and we should have got that graphic. But nobody wants to see that graphic. So stick around, no pun intended, for Secure Digital Live.
This is a Security Weekly production.
Welcome to Secure Digital Live. If your users are going to keep putting risky stuff on your machine, you're screwed. So Top can help us understand the complexity of blockchain.
I was reading through the show notes, man. Oof.
In binary, it would be 001. Who cares? But it's probably not significant anyway. Like you're looking out through the HAL dot,
oh.
Hey, Dave.
It's like SIM, but with,
It would be like SIM.
Instead of AI, it's only.
Are you working on earning your Security Plus certification? Earn your certification faster and smarter with Sybex. Their courses and guides are compiled with CompTIA-approved content, providing you with the knowledge to be fully prepared on exam day. The Sybex Security Plus Gold course includes a partner-to-you pass guarantee. Users enjoy free course updates and repeats until you pass the Security Plus exam. Learn more and register for a free trial today at sybex.com/go/free trial. When you are ready to purchase, save 50% with code SECURITY50. Hurry, this offer ends December 31st. Accredited by Microsoft, Cisco, NetApp, IDLE, Oracle, and EC Council, QuickStart delivers high-impact, low-cost IT training through its cognitive learning platform in multiple domains. With QuickStart, you get an ever-growing catalog of courses, self-paced courses offered through a monthly subscription, virtual classrooms offered through an annual subscription, peer-to-peer learning, mentoring, official courses, certified instructors, hands-on labs, and more. For more information, visit www.quickstart.com. Use coupon code PAUL20 to get 20% off on all cybersecurity courses. Quick Start, creating world-class technologists. You and only you can join us for our next webcast, which will be on November 8th from 3 to 4. Signal Sciences and Testing in the SDLC. So go to securityweekly.com/Signal Sciences to register now for that, because you do have to register, and you should, because it's free, and then you get to watch that cool webcast. So I really think you should do that.
And our own Larry Pearce is going to, and Paul, they're both.
That's right. So check it out. Yeah. Oh, thanks for joining us today, Robb Tracy from Sybex. Yeah.
Hello.
Well, Robb is a human behavior specialist, just like Russ. They actually know something about how people behave. Unlike me, who I can tell you lots of things about how stack cores behave. But when it comes to humans, I'm like, just get the flamethrower out. That'll be the simplest solution to your problems. But we're going to get a chance to talk about phishing then, and that's going to let us have some time to spend with some experts talking about how maybe you can start to stop phishing. We can't seem to quit doing that no matter what we do. I get calls all the time about how do we train our employees to not fall for this stuff. And I was doing phishing attacks in 1986 at the bank by calling people on the phone and getting them to give me information using social engineering. I mean, all this stuff. I figure there was like Egyptian sailors who were getting taken out at Caesarea by cons, in like the year 1500 BC or something. And people are still falling for these cons today. I haven't seen that change one bit. I figure in 10,000 AD, people are still going to be falling for cons when they walk off the ship at the new Galactic Emporium or whatever, and it's going to be the same old cons. So I have no faith in human nature, so I just always assume everything is going to be a problem. The internet made this completely easy. We're all standing on the world's largest subway platform, licking the grab rail. I saw somebody doing that once.
Oh my God!
I was like, hey, that's one way to build up your immune system. Yeah, but we got two experts on humans here, and let's just start off, Robb, by talking about how do we develop a phishing attack. So, I mean, I think that for our listeners, that would be a really good way to start, because I've built a couple of the. Not using them in the real world, but I mean, just for my own amusement. Robb, what do you think?
Well, phishing attacks are really popular today, and I think it's due to a couple of key reasons. Number one, they're really easy to set up. You don't have to have a degree in electrical engineering to pull off a phishing attack. You can be your average hacker, script kiddie type of person and put together a very effective phishing attack. They're also really, really successful because people click on the stuff, and that makes it so you can expose really high value assets really easily, and you can fool most people a lot of the time, even experienced security administrators who should know better. So what do you need to set up a phishing attack? First of all, you got it. Most will go get a domain name that's really similar to a legitimate domain name. So if your domain name that you want to attack is www.mybank.com, you might go register www.mybank.org or www.mybank with 2 N's or 2 K's.com, something that looks really, really similar. Although a lot of phishers will skip this step because, frankly, people don't verify URLs in these phishing emails that they get, and they'll just click on it anyway. But the more sophisticated ones will.
Yeah, I mean, I got hit with one where they did. I got hit with one where they did just that. They had gone and gotten a very similar domain to my. I didn't actually click on it, but I almost did. And they had gotten the names of students for my daughter went to school from their website and their directory, which was published on there. They didn't have any personal information, but they had all their names. Right. So they went in and got all the names, and then they had parent emails and all this kind of stuff, and they got all that. And they got a domain that looked a lot like that, and then you got it. And I was like, oh, yeah, well, that's weird. And I almost clicked it, and I was like, wait a minute. Yeah. They would never ask me for this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've dealt with several at when I worked in IT at the university for a long time, and they're still sending out emails saying, hey, now they're taking proactive defense too. It's like, hey, this just came out this weekend. In fact, we got one from a very high-ranking member of the university last weekend. He didn't send it out. But IT would have to send out a proactive email to say, "Hey, don't take the bait."
That's how I get a pay raise every year. Yeah, exactly.
Dear Human Resources, Doug needs a raise.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Doug White, one of our most prestigious faculty members, would needs a 50% pay raise, and by order of the president.
Click on here. Click on this link.
I built one for it was a con for corporate employees, and I built one, and I literally just went and stole all the code from a bank's website. I just took all their code and I put it on a fake website I set up on my server. And it looked just like it. And all it did was, when you type it in, it says, sorry, we're down temporarily, try again later. And it grabbed your username and password. And some people didn't like me doing that. But well, so let me ask you this. I mean, some of those are obviously reasons that it works. But why do you think humans are so vulnerable to these attacks? I mean, we talk about it all the time. How many people that use the internet aren't aware that phishing goes on? And so why do we just keep falling for it, no matter how much you get trained?
I saw a statistic just last week said 78% of users will not click on a phishing email, which sounds really good. You're like, hey, we're making progress. 3/4 of people don't click on it. Problem is, 1/4 still do click on it, and it only takes like one person sometimes for a very elaborate phishing attack to take place. And I think it's because phishers understand how people think. So if you look at an average phishing email, you're going to see a sense of legitimacy. That's why we got the URL and the fake website that looks like it's legitimate. That engenders a sense of trust. They also insert a sense of urgency. You'll see something to the effect of immediate response required. You have to take action or something bad is going to happen. And they may even instill a sense of fear. You might see a message that says something like, your account has been compromised. You have to take action now. And people are going, oh, crap, what do I do? My account's been compromised. And they may have an immediate call to action to add additional urgency, saying you have to do this within 24 hours. If you don't, we're going to suspend your account, or we're going to put your funds into receivership, or whatever it is. And then they will, provide the necessary links for someone to say, okay, I'll do whatever you say. I think it's also because we have this sense of respect for authority sometimes in society. So if the message, you'll see that phishing emails tend to come across as very authoritative, like you're in trouble, you've got a problem, you've got to fix it right now. And everyone's like, okay, yeah, I will. It came from my bank. I better do that. And they understand how people think, and more than technically savvy, I think they're more psychologically savvy than anything else.
No, greed and fear. I mean, that's the essence of any good con is you have to play on people's greed or fear. And I thought up one the other day where the university's searching for a new president, and I thought, what if I put one up and I sent a picture of Donald Trump Jr. and I said that the board of trustees has decided that Donald Trump Jr. will be the new president of Roger Williams University. And I sent that out to all the faculty. Click here if you don't agree with this decision. You know, I mean, are you gonna? Somebody's gonna click that, and they're gonna go, "Oh no, this can't be happening," and they're gonna click, you know,
And not to belittle or even belabor this topic of fear or this addition of fear into it, but you know, I got an email from I actually keep getting these emails from somebody who's watched too much Black Mirror, and you know, in the subject line is an old password that I used to use, and it says, you know, let me get right to the point. This is the password that you used on December 15th, 1990, whatever, to access XYZ, more like XXX adultwebsite.com. That's just total BS. That's not true.
Yeah.
And but what they've done is they've bought these lists from the dark web, or they've found them easily online, and they just do a simple mail merge and see who bites. You know what I mean? And it may not be you, but it might be your neighbor. Or
but if you send out a million, and as Rob says, a quarter of people, so 25% of that, I mean, that's still 250,000 clicks.
Yep.
You know, and even if only 1% of those actually, you know, gives you their bank account or whatever, I mean, that's still 250 bank account numbers. So you're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from what I'm seeing too, they're getting more sophisticated. The mass emails still go out, mass phishing emails, those are still around, but the spear phishing emails, I think, are a lot more successful. And those guys will take, or gals, women, men, everybody does it. They will spend time doing extensive research on their target person. I saw one, it's a personal acquaintance of mine. The person was an accounts payable person inside of the organization. So their job was to write checks to vendors. And they got an email that looked like it came from the company president.
Yeah.
And it said, you need to transfer, you know, like $25,000 to this bank account. We got to pay this vendor right away. We're behind. We got to keep their services. So please pay them. And it was a phishing email. The attacker had gone to enough lengths that they were able to write a phishing email message that used the same tone, same grammar, same everything as the CEO typically did.
Sure.
And so when the accounts payable person got that email, it looked totally legit. And they told me that they had the wire transfer all set up, ready to go, and they were about to click submit when they got a call from IS&T saying, don't do it. That email just got flagged in our email security appliance. I just reviewed it. That's a scam. Don't do it. So
I know one that actually they did click submit, and they got approached across different divisions of the company, and it was like this came from, and they got all the information, I'm sure, off of the public website. They said, this is from this accounting group. We need you to authorize payment to this account, the new vendor. They had a bunch of mystical numbers that nobody knew what any of them meant, and the person was like, yeah, and they were like, and it has to be done tonight, because if this doesn't go, this vendor's going to sell this to another company. We're going to lose this whole deal. Can you do this tonight? I'm so sorry to ask, but we really need it done. And the person was like, yeah, let me just take care of it. And they went ahead and did it, and then they lost a whole pile of money. And and the question I got was, can we get the money back? I was like, you'll need to hire a private mercenary force to invade probably at least one third world country. Maybe more, or maybe even not a third world country.
But I also think more modern these types of attacks, the phishing attacks, I mean, there are some red flags. Like, for instance, if the word Bitcoin is used at any point inside, you know, inside the email, that should be a red flag. You know what I mean? It's not like you need to be an engineer to recognize certain telltale signs that this might not be legitimate.
Yeah, but, you know, I looked at this, and it wasn't Bitcoin. It was like, you know, we need you to transfer this to this bank account.
Money,
now, they gave them the bank account number, so they actually gave him the other way of a con, which is the trust piece.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, yeah, he's like, I because it's so urgent, I'm going to go ahead and share our bank account information with you for the vendor. And, you know I shouldn't send this over public email, but I'm doing it. And the person's like, wow, yeah, okay. That's why it's called a confidence game.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Okay, so my out of the blue question when I was thinking about this was, as we deal with more AIs, I mean, do you think that AIs will be vulnerable to these same tactics?
That's a hard question, because as we talked about, the phishing email, the phishing exploit is completely dependent upon human emotion, like trust, fear, urgency, that sense of respect for authority. So if AI gets to the point where it mimics those emotions, replicates, emulates those emotions, then yeah, it could. I think the good news is that we could probably program AI to not do that. Recognize those.
Don't be a
Humans,
stupid.
on the other hand, not so much.
No, I mean, that was always my problem with Turing tests. Was the whole idea of a Turing test was could an AI mimic a human? And I'm like, why on earth would you want something to mimic humans? They're stupid and pathetic and vulnerable to all kinds of things. And so, do you really want your AIs to be going, I don't know, the sky is falling, or do you want your AI to go, really? I'm dispatching a team of robo dog bots that are coming to chew your legs off. Please don't do this crap anymore, and you won't be able to without hands. So, I mean, that's the AI I would design, because it would not have these human foibles that were always the whole Turing test thing that bothered me a lot.
Yeah. And I mean, if we look at things like urgency, fear, these marquee sort of emotions that we're talking about here about humans and how they fall for these tricks. I mean, could those be programmed into an AI? And if we look at logic versus reason, which logic is the sort of the computer area, and reason is more of the human area. I mean, can a hacker get around that?
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like that's where that this might fall apart, at least currently. Not to say
so. What do you guys think the main goal of phishing really is right now? I mean, to me, the oldest game was just to either get into the system or con you for money. But I mean, is this becoming a more sophisticated thing?
What do you think, Rob?
Well, I think that the base goals there are still very valid. They want to trick people into revealing their credentials. They want to get people to give them money. And to, of course, distribute malware. Those are the main ones that I see all the time.
From a nation-state perspective, when you think about people who are engaging in this type of behavior, I would also like to add maybe a third one, and it's like to disseminate a campaign of misinformation, as we saw sort of the elections and things that are going on.
And trust compromises. Yeah. I mean, the nuclear industry got compromised, and the DHS workup report was released, and it's this big thick report. But I actually read it, and I went to the webinar, and what they were doing was they were fishing small fish and using the small fish to catch big fish. Yeah. So they were taking over the laundry that was providing uniforms to the site, and they were using that system to get into the control systems, and it's pretty scary stuff.
Yeah.
And it's effective.
It is, and I was going to tell you, I mean, one of my specialties is penetration testing, and I don't do the the brute force try to break through the firewall type of penetration testing. I can accomplish a huge amount during a pen test by simply sending phishing emails to the people inside, and they fall for it every time. And I don't have to have an electrical engineering degree to make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, the first pen test I did when they weren't called pen tests was back in the 80s, and what we were doing was calling people inside the organization from outside. So we would go to this deli and call them on a payphone, literally, and the phone inside the company did a double ring, like a British ring, when it got an outside call. So people could see it was an outside call, and every time, I might have to call 22 people, but by the 23rd one, I would get somebody, and they would give me their username and log in, or they would give me something I was asking for, and it just didn't seem like I could ever stop them from doing this. So what do you think? How do we train, Rob? How do we train somebody to not fall for these things?
It's hard just because of the human emotions involved, but you can. I think you do. I think you got to train people, because awareness is really your only defense. You can install all the filters you want, all your email security appliances. They will work most of the time, but they will fail some of the time, and something's going to get through. So folks need to be trained to look for the bad links, look for the grammar that sounds off. It may be technically correct grammar, but it just doesn't sound right. Like, how many people sign their emails with many warm regards? Well, I don't. I don't know anybody who does.
Now, I resent that.
I'm sorry. I know Doug does. Any message with a zip file attached, to try to make it past the filters. And I think it's hilarious, because I signed up for a Microsoft Outlook account, and if you upload multiple files, it says, "Would you like to zip these?" And I'm like, no. Everybody I'm going to send this to is going to think it's a phishing email.
Yeah, I mean, and everybody's blocking it.
Yeah, it gets blocked. I mean, also just teach people to recognize that demanding tone, like, you must respect my authority and do what I say. If it says that, it's probably a scam.
All my emails are like that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And also, yeah, to use the email address versus the name header, because you can fake that. I mean, so just look in your email client if you're using one. Just check out what the actual sender's address is.
But what should we be putting in training? I mean, so literally, to just gel it down, what should we be putting in training for people? I mean, how do we conduct these classes to start with? So one thing I get controversy about is I was reviewing something for a company not too long ago. It was a training they'd paid a bunch of money for. I was very underwhelmed with this training because they spent most of the training time talking about the different types of attacks and all these things, and they didn't spend hardly any time trying to actually train people not to do it. So the ones they had were so lame. They were like those sexual harassment trainings, which are the same way. And the training literally said something like, a call comes in from a man whose name is, unpronounceable, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I think that one's a phishing attack, but. What should we put into the training? I mean, how should it work?
I think the biggest danger most companies face now are those spear phishing emails. That's what I do when I do a pen test because they work really well. Yeah. And so, as we were talking just a second ago, I can't remember which one of you said it, but you got to look at the header of that email and compare it with who it says it's coming from where it actually came from. And the problem with doing that is a lot of end users are not sophisticated enough to understand the difference. So that's going to take some learning and some training and some understanding and a willingness to say, I'm not sure, I'm going to forward this to IS&T or the help desk and have them look at it before I actually take action.
Yeah. And another thing that I'll say in this training, people take for granted that technology will solve technology problems, and that's not always the case, especially with these new smart filters that come embedded with certain email clients like Outlook or MacMail or whatever it might be. They can block a lot, so people would think, oh, well, it didn't hit a spam filter, so it must be legitimate. Therefore, I'm going to click on it, and then they do it anyway. That's not what that's meant to do. It's meant to target X, some of them, not all of them. It can't do that. Otherwise, we wouldn't get any email. So just because it gets through doesn't mean it's.
And I'll put on there in your training. One of the things I think you need to do is you need to just assume people will fail. Yeah. And not make it, you're an idiot for failing, but assume that, and when you do that, then build into the back end of your system. You need to train some other people too. How do we better build resilience and into our networks, and so that even if this happens, we have, so we use two-factor. You gave up your credentials, but you didn't give up your YubiKey. And all those things, then I think, if we assume that, we can train a little better and not just train people that are going to fall for this, because they're going to keep falling for it, but maybe train the back end and say, we didn't spend any time training our back end people on how to stop this or bidding better policies to prevent it from happening when it does, because it's going to happen.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, kind of like I said a minute ago, reward people for when they do what's right. If they get a suspicious email, they forward it to IS&T, they realize it's phishing, instead of, burying it or whatever, to say, hey, look what this employee did. They recognize it, and here's how they did it, and so on and so forth. So everyone else goes, yeah, I would like that. Give them $100, something like that, where other users are going to say, hey, I want that $100. I'm going to do that too.
Make it a bug bounty.
Absolutely.
So the first person who reports a phishing gets a gift certificate or something every month. I don't know. I mean,
that's half day off.
Yeah. Even
okay.
Better.
So let's do our top 5 things that we think you should look for to spot a phishing attack, and I'll let Rob go first because he's our esteemed guest.
I always look for the bad links. The number one thing I teach people to do is if you get an email that says click a link, hover over that link, and if it ain't going where it says it's going, then it's probably phishing. And the hard part comes when the domain names are so close that if you're not really careful, because when you hover over it, the text is like 0.05 font, and you're like, if you're old like me, you're like, I don't understand what that says. Yeah. But that's the number one thing.
I wish they would build that into the browsers and the emails so that they automatically trigger and say, look, this link doesn't match the text, and it seems like that would be easy enough to code and say, are you sure you want to click that?
How hard could it be?
No, I mean, it's all right there. The text is there in ASCII. The link is there in ASCII. So I don't know why you can't do a comparison and say, are you sure these two things match? Are you sure? Of course, people turn it off, and I'm tired of that. I don't want to have to approve a click. Russ?
I would say headers that, like Rob had mentioned, we were talking earlier, headers that don't match up with information that's included in the email. It can be difficult to ascertain, well, not only where, but also what is included in an email header, what's important and what isn't. But if you do some Google searches on, how do I decode an email header, or how do I look at an email header, and that will help. You know what I mean?
So I'll take tone then. So anytime somebody promises you something or something is urgent and or too good to be true, you ought to just try to build into your brain, and I've tried to do that. I mean, don't react. So you know, that I think is really an important thing, and you have to train yourself to do that, because I know on airplanes, if there's a warning that comes up, a verbal warning that says "Don't think." You know, because
don't think, act.
It's like that, but that refers to your training. It's do what you were trained to do. But as long as you're thinking about it, that's a good way to start. But you have to train yourself so that the minute you feel enticed, and that's the feeling I look for a con. The minute I feel enticed, which makes me extremely cynical, but the minute I feel enticed, I immediately start saying, what's wrong with this picture? That's how I got robbed in Jamaica, because I felt enticed and I didn't think about it. I just went for it. And the guy was like, here, we got a motorcycle for rent half the rate that these other motorcycles. Like, oh, thank you. And then they robbed me. But, I mean, if you feel enticed in an email or on a website or anything else, that's when you should immediately kick that cynicism bone in and let that, you know, let that nasty. Just think about Doug whenever you think anything. What would Doug do? He would be cynical and paranoid about this and not click that link, because that's when they're going to get you, is when you go, oh yeah, that's good. Rob, you want to do another one? We got two more.
Along that same line is that when the demanding tone comes across, in addition to the incentive tone, you know, when they're saying you have to do this now, the thing that I teach end users is verify. And that means picking up the telephone and not using any number in the email, but call the person or the organization and verbally verify that this really is an issue. 99.9% of the time, it is a scam.
Absolutely.
And if I can, I'll add one more.
Okay.
Is any kind of email that's asking for account information, either verify your account or log in here, click this button, or pay us, and we'll, you know, we need the money now, that kind of thing. So anything related to finance or account, you know, just memorize your bank's and important financial institutions' web addresses. bankofamerica.com or citizensbank.com, or, you know, those types of things, and don't click on the links in the email, but log in through.
Go directly.
Manually type in. Don't be lazy.
That's what anytime I get some from a bank, which I know is a scam, I immediately go to the bank's website. I never click links to get there, even if I felt like it was something. I do that. The university sent me a thing the other day saying you need to reset your password.
Oh yeah.
And it was a totally legitimate thing. I mean, the links were fine, everything was fine, but it was an email from the university says, click here to go reset your password. And I was like, and I went and I did it through the university site instead of clicking the link, even though the link was totally legit. But it was a weird link. It was this big long mess of things that was trying to take me directly in. So again, it was that kind of thing. And so companies maybe back off those kind of approaches as well.
Yeah.
The other one I'll add, so it's 6, is the threat. I usually have it set 5, Rob, because that way I get to do one more than Russ. But it was since we have a guest. My other one was a threat. So when you see threats that come in, the most common one now is this porn threat. We activated your webcam and observed you viewing pornography at home. If you don't go to this site and do the following, we will. We're going to reveal this to all your friends and family on your Facebook site because we hacked that too. Always just stop and think before you panic. I mean, maybe you did go to the porn site. Okay, I don't care. And I don't want to see it on your Facebook feed, but I don't care that you did it either. But at the same time, think, is this a threat and is it real? Or is it just some nonsense where they're trying to get me to react? Because that's what they're almost always trying to do, is get you to just not think, just react. And it's like, oh, no, I've got to do something about this because I certainly don't want, the entire congregation of the church to see this video. And which, I had somebody call me
about. The reverend's participating.
I had somebody call me about one of those once, and they were like, they said they're going to send it to the entire membership of my church. And I was like, I just say, why not? Who cares? I say, go for it, send it out. So is there a good technology we could use, Rob, that would help us to prevent these things? We've talked about some, but what are there additional things we need to be doing?
Well, just that email scanning appliance. And I know a lot of small companies can't afford it. There are a lot of cloud-based solutions you can use that don't require an on-site administrator to manage and that are fairly inexpensive to sign up for. If you can afford it, I strongly recommend an appliance that sits in between your perimeter and your mail server that makes sure that everything going in and out goes through it, and then become an expert on that device. I've seen a lot of people buy the device. They don't really understand or fully comprehend how to use it. They plug it in, connect cables and turn it on and go with the defaults, and it doesn't do that great of a job. You really got to analyze what your emails look like, what's coming in, what's coming out, and then custom tailor that device. But even then, as we said, you can't rely on it. That's like a first line defense. You got to have that end user training as the back line defense.
Rob, any consumer suggestions or consumer grade suggestions, not just enterprise level, for the people who are watching that are consumer or just regular consumers?
No, I'm going to stay out of that fray. Someone will be mad at me at some point
Got
because
it.
I've actually done work for several of these different companies.
Got it.
You didn't recommend our product.
Yeah. The other piece of this too is telephones. I get probably more robo spam calls now that are phishing scams. I got one this morning from Apple, where it's like, Apple has warned you that your account is not valid.
IRS.
Your account is being used to hack the United States government. You must call our assistance right away. You know, and I'm like,
press one.
Does anybody fall for this? But I mean, I know they do, or they wouldn't keep doing it. You guys have any thoughts about that?
Well, I'm happy to report that my daughter works for a law firm in San Francisco that is actively pursuing the people who are behind these things. So I am hoping that she can hit them where it counts in the pocketbook and shut them down.
Well, the only problem with that is, of course, that it crosses borders and it gets out of jurisdiction. And so if I set up my phone dialing service on Vonage and I set it up with an American number, but it's set up in Indonesia, it's really tough for anybody to pursue that in any kind of court of law, because a lot of countries just won't take action and they're not going to take transborder action.
No, I don't care.
There are apps that you can download too. I think you have one that's $1 a month or something.
Nomo Robo,
that's one. And maybe one or
and those
two
are
others.
blacklisting apps. I mean, and that doesn't stop it, but it definitely cuts it way down to try and prevent it. Certainly, you can block numbers on your own phone, but they change them constantly. They use local numbers all the time. We get them every day that are like local exchanges that look like they're from nearby. They even have names on them. I got one not too long ago with the name of somebody that lives in my neighborhood. So they just gone in the telephone book and looked up a name and put that on there as the name of the account. All those are things and reasons you should be suspicious. It won't hurt anything, just to let you know, it won't hurt anything if you answer the call. So if you answer the call, nothing really can come of that. Where it's going to get ugly is if you agree to talk to them and or you do what they tell you to do, which is often go to a website and or dial a number. And what they're going to do when they get you to call these numbers is they're going to want to install software on your machine. So this is a standard con for this, is that they tell you it's an anti-fraud activity, that you need to allow them access to your machine. They'll get you to go to Log Me In or something like that and install the Log Me In client so that they can connect to your local system to fix the malware that's on your machine. And when they do that, because I actually walked a guy through the whole thing one time with a VM. And I let him actually install his software, which was pretty amusing. And I said I had a VM just for that. And when he called the next time, I gave him the IP, and he came in and he put I put the client on there just like he told me. And then he did it. He installed a piece of malware on there that was going to basically extract everything. And it was, and he was like, now you need to change this privilege to administrator. That way it will always be in charge. And I was like, oh, thank you, sir. You've saved me. And he was like, yes, it's great. What did he say? Something like, it's great doing a public service like this. It just makes you feel good. And I was like, it does.
all the way to the bank.
And and I mean, I was like, yeah. And of course, it was. And then I watched a firewall. I mean, within minutes, it was like on that IP address trying to come at it. I had it blocked by then, but if I was really nasty, I would have written a piece of malware. That was what I thought. I was like, I'm going to write a piece of malware and let them come on my machine and then download malware on them, which would be quite amusing. Any other comments, Rob?
No, this has been a good session. I hope that other folks who are listening will take what we've talked about and apply it.
Well, we'll have to have you on again.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rob from Sybex for contributing. Thanks, Russ, for joining us with the other side of human behavior. And we hope we'll see you next time on Secure Digital Life.
Thank you, guys. This was fun.
Bye, Rob. Thanks.
See ya.